PNC Unfiltered is back. We're going to
We're
take a
back,
look
ladies
at
and gentlemen.
little Kevin O'Leary on CNN situation where he's really just being a common sense guy, and we see some banshee chimpanzee level behavior in response. So let's just check this out real quick. We'll just kind of shoot it a little bit, see what happens.
Yeah, I'm a longtime Shark Tank fan viewer, so ultimate respect for Kevin O'Leary. I don't know what this bimbo is saying, but we'll see about it.
Whoa, dude, disrespect. I don't care. This is about Tim Walz talking to Tesla. So basically, Tim Walz was giving like a little speech the other day, and he was talking to the crowd, and he was like, what really gets my spirits up is looking at the ticker for Tesla stock going down day by day.
Mhm.
And this
I
statement
saw
will
that.
backfire on him in this video. I don't know if you guys have already seen this. This is crazy.
Yeah, I think I saw that he actually backtracked on that and issued like an apology at his next thing he was doing,
Yeah, he
which
should
is kind
have
of
given
funny.
what Kevin O'Leary reveals here. Yeah, he should have apologized.
I can't hear him, dog. Can you hear him?
You can't hear it?
No, I can't hear it.
Well, let's
Sorry,
figure that out.
folks. We got some technical difficulties.
All right, I'm just the mics out. Tell me now.
No, I can't hear him. I could just pretend like I could hear him and then like be like, oh.
That'd be better, dog, to be honest. Just do that. All right, we're going to share screen again. We're going to try it again. Also share audio. Yes. All right, how about now? Dude, what's going on? You should be able to hear this.
I'm not getting the noises. I'm not getting the noises, dog. I think they're getting stuck in the cloud or something.
The cloud's messing up right now. How about now?
Yeah, I can hear it just fine now, dog.
This is so, dude. What's happening? My Wi-Fi is not that bad.
Between that and Tim Walz saying,
I
get a kick out of it.
Okay, I don't know what happened. All right, here we go.
Violence. We've already established that. What's the difference between that and Tim Walz saying, I get a kick out of it?
First of all, Tim Walz is a complete moron to me. I have to be very honest, and I'm not surprised why the American people did not choose him. Nothing against the vice president.
Notice a black guy in a suit makes sense. He's wearing a suit. He looks like a normal man. He's making good points. I'm not only pro-white here. Okay, I'm pro-traditional. See what I'm saying?
No. I'll tell you what. My favorite type of people, Pete. I think I've told you this in the past. Conservative black men. Nothing makes me happier than running into a well-spoken black person who's like doesn't have this victim mindset, holds themselves to some kind of values and presents themselves. It's like I just love seeing that. I'll talk to those kinds of people for hours, dog. I love it.
Yeah, dude, I'm mad racist, so it helps when they're not scaring me. I don't want to be scared.
I do.
With that said, Elon Musk employs 80,000+ Americans. Most of them are working class people. The implications of the stock, let's say this were to continue on for another year, so I'm just throwing out a hypothetical. Will the company at some point have to decrease its workplace?
Yeah.
Most of those people, I would imagine, probably vote for Democrats, at least some of them. So now you're impacting people who likely share your worldview because you disagree with Elon Musk. Don't buy the car. Just like those guys are saying, let's protest Anheuser-Busch, et cetera. We're just not going to buy their beer. Right. I'm okay with that. But destroying public property, there is no place for that. I agree with Kevin. Lock them up and set an example that this is not what we're going to tolerate in this country.
Obviously, the violence is completely unacceptable. And these people will go to jail. You can't burn a dealership and not get caught eventually and go to jail. But it is, again, the broader question here about has it crossed the line when people are sort of rooting for the failure of a company?
Well, first, let me say, until yesterday, I think I was one of the only Democratic elected officials to unambiguously condemn the violence and destruction against Tesla. I don't think you have to be tough on crime to do that. As you know, my grandfather is part of Gandhi's Satyagraha movement, independence movement. He said sabotage is a form of violence. I mean, this is not the best form of protest, and it's not the tradition. The second point is, I'm not going to root against Tesla. There are 20,000 people who work in my district who make a living off this. They're building electric vehicles that ultimately are good for the climate. I have huge, huge problems with what Elon Musk is doing. Have the protest and the conversation and criticism of Musk. Don't take it out on a company.
I would like to hear specifics as to what he doesn't like that Elon's doing. It sounds like he's just posturing here. He's like, I also don't like a lot of things this fascist is doing, but let's not destroy property, guys. That's where I draw the line, is property.
Right.
Yeah, dude.
I mean, I have some gripes with the Doge thing. Is I think that they need to get into the Pentagon and start worrying about some of that shit. Trump just signed some kind of executive order. It was something he did where he actually allocated more money to the military instead of, like, the sole purpose of Doge is to cut down on spending in all facets of the government, right? Well, the Pentagon and the military industrial complex is the biggest one. That's the biggest thing. If we could chop that in half, that makes up for every other government department that we could, start cracking down on. So that's the big thing that people have been urging, is like, that you need to get over there. But there's also some speculating that Trump doesn't really want to cut the Pentagon because, he's foreseeing some wars with Iran, obviously the Houthis situation. And I'm not saying it's not justified that maybe we need to, give Iran and the Houthis some focus and start taking care of them. But I also think we can, damper the amount of money we're putting into the Pentagon. I mean, I think everybody realizes that's the biggest corruption, right? Am I wrong, Pete?
So, yeah, I mean, just on the Pentagon point, I think we should have been investigated the money trail from 9/11. Like, what? We were missing $3 trillion in the Pentagon financial department that just happened to explode on 9/11, and it was announced like the day before 9/11. So, I mean, if they were serious about corruption, they would definitely look in the money trail in federal buildings like the Pentagon around the time of 9/11, tragedies like that, where apparently money just doesn't matter for a day or two because we just got exploded by Israel. We'll talk about that later, or some Middle Eastern guys. You could say Middle Eastern and be correct because no matter what, it's Middle Eastern. But regardless,
they haven't passed an audit in 10 years or something like that, right?
Yeah, they haven't passed an audit. They're like using all paper. It's really stupid. So yeah, they should do that. But you were talking about the military spending. Guess how much we spend in the military each year? You might know this, you might not, but it's just a question.
I think it's in the range of, it's like half of our entire budget. It's like $2 trillion or something, isn't it?
It's not half our budget, but it's probably like a quarter. It's about 800 billion. I remember seeing an 800 billion number from a few years back. And if he's increasing it to like $1 trillion, that would be a little over a quarter. Like, what are we at? Like 3.4 trillion GDP, or not GDP, but 3.4 trillion in taxpayer dollars a year. So that would be about a little over a quarter if he gets up to $1 trillion. But again, you got to think of what the government's for. What is the government for? The government is a place to protect and allow liberty of its citizens. So it's to protect and provide a safe and prosperous society, but allowing them free choice. So really the protection aspect comes first. You can't have a flourishing society if it's not protected. And so that perfectly aligns with military spending. That's the traditional, like, conservative view anyway, is like, we lead by strength, peace through strength. And so if we're spending a lot of money on the military in order to, have these deterrents for other people, and also allow the states to feel safe so they can flourish, I think that's a good thing. I just think downstream from that, there's a lot of stuff that's really wasteful spending. I mean, Social Security and all these like social policies that we've put in I don't think they total as much as military spending, but it's getting close. And military spending is a prerequisite to having a good society. So I'm looking more so at like
What are we doing for Social Security? The 200-year-old guys that are on Social Security that don't exist, or names that like have never existed, or they don't have like a birth certificate to trace back to, but there's money still coming out of that bank account. So who's getting that money?
Right.
That kind of stuff. And then again, a lot of USAID, like a lot of different donations and stuff like that.
I could see where you're getting into the whole Social Security thing. I mean, the 300-year-olds getting Social Security is obviously blasphemous. I think we might have slightly different points of views on whether we think Social Security is justified and we should even have it at all.
Okay. Here's the deal.
But
I'm okay. I'm more okay.
Before we get into it, I want to touch.
Bro, I'm trying to clear up your characterization of me. You said we might not agree on if it should exist. I'm just going to clarify what I think about that. I think that it should exist, but it's the best. It's the best like social policy you can think of. Like it's giving like seniors money from the taxpayers because they're not working anymore, even though they should have a retirement fund from their company that covers that. You know, that's kind of the whole idea of IRAs and 401ks and all that. But either way, I'm okay with giving some old people a little bit of money, but it's hard. You're gonna have a hard time convincing me that we should give just homeless, like black or like just crackhead losers a bunch of money just because they're poor. Like, all right, dude, you're like 35, dog. Like, go to McDonald's or something, man.
Yeah, there's definitely the incentive structure. Definitely, I think we need to nuance that up a little bit and make it a little more effective, like you were saying, where if you're 40 and getting Social Security, bro, go get a fucking job. But I also look at I was under the impression you weren't a big fan of Social Security in general, just based on a conversation we had the other day where you said that you think, you know, the family should be able to take care of their loved ones. And I think
I like that.
And I think there's a point of like there's a point of truth there where it's like maybe we need to incentivize the family structure through maybe some changes with Social Security where people know that, hey, the government isn't coming to save you at the end of the day. Maybe you actually work a little bit with your family relationships, and maybe that'll be better for society. You know what I mean? But aside from that,
I was just gonna like just to go down that rabbit just for a second. How do you think it's even possible for us to reestablish community ties and like communal values amongst like, you know, villages and tribes and smaller little municipalities? Like, what is the first thing we have to do in order to make that a sustainable long-term solution culturally? Well, we have to get all of these like diaspora people out of the country that don't have any cultural or ethnic or religious ties to the area. So if we get all the illegals out, we get all these people on H-1B visas that know nothing about America but can code for some reason out. We get all these groups that like don't have any ties to the U.S. out. Get the criminals out. Send them to Guantanamo. I don't care. And then you have a more similar society, you know, a more congruent society that would allow for a little bit more, you know, communal, I guess like a charity and stuff like that. So if you think about Miami, the most diverse city in the U.S., I've told you this before, but it has the least involvement in community service and in charity and like homeless shelters, all that.
There's a lot of single moms down there.
Yeah, well, the city that volunteers the least is the most diverse. So we need to like take away the diversity from small cities. I don't care if you think that sounds like more white. It probably would be more white. You know, sorry, dog. That's just the effect of having a good society in America. It's more white. That's just what it is.
Okay, well, let me push back. Hold on. Before I get into all of that, I wanted to touch on something. The first thing I wanted to touch on before you wanted to go down this rabbit hole was that just the military spending. If we can, let's go back a few minutes. This is tying into that. I want to clarify that I do think that's probably the foremost important thing that the government can do is making sure that we have a secure nation. I think that's their utmost priority. I don't have a problem with us spending hundreds of millions of dollars on it to make sure that's the case.
About hundreds of billions.
Maybe or hundreds of billions could also be possible. But I just think back to this Josh Hawley clip. I think you saw it where he was talking to somebody in the military industrial complex. I can't remember the exact scope of what the conversation was about, but he held up a bag. And it was a bag of bolts. It was like this big.
About how much the rounds cost?
It was like this. It was like not even rounds. It was a bag of bolts. It was like a 24-inch bag of bolts.
I know what you're talking about.
And he asked the person, how much do you think this bag of bolts costs? And it was like, well, look, based off the specific bolts there, it looks like you could get those at Advanced Auto Parts or whatever the hell it was for like $100 or something. And he said the military paid $30,000 for this. That's the corruption. You know what I mean?
Well, I'll just tell you, like I work at a place that does a lot with like bolts and industrial and construction parts. It might not be the same grading and material as what military parts would be. I would assume military parts are just more expensive inherently. There's probably some proprietary process in getting these bolts forged or whatever. But in general, there's no bolt on the planet that's going to cost $1,000. Like there's like you could get an 1.25 inch diameter like B7 grade bolt that's like 36 inches long. You could get 100 of those for like less than $1,000. And those are huge. Like they hold up canopies at like gas stations and at like big supermarkets. And like those are maybe 1,000 for 100 at the most you'd spend on that. So they're definitely
I think you touched on something important there where you were like, well, some of these bolts, for instance, maybe they're like proprietary. They're meant for this specific plane, and that's why they cost so much. It's like, okay, in a normal, I guess, free market economy, they could charge whatever they want for that if they have the proprietary element on that specific bolt. But I think whenever it comes to, okay, these bolts are only being made for our for the betterment of our security as a nation. You know what I mean? Our national security is at risk with this stuff. That's why they can charge so much. I think there needs to be some checks and balances in play to where these manufacturers of these proprietary bolts for these specific airplanes, they shouldn't be able to charge whatever the hell they want. I think there should be some checks and balances on that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that is where the corruption is at. That big margin in between how much it costs them to produce the bolt and what they're selling it for to the government just shows that they're being inherently unfair. They probably have this contract with the government where the government's like, yeah, dude, we'll give you this for that. You can keep the excess margin and we'll just keep coming to you. It could be just like one of those situations where people at like Lockheed Martin at the top of the executive bracket of that company end up working for the government in DHS or whatever it is. And that there's a big issue with that too, where if you had a military contract with your company that produces like some parts for the military, and then you work for the military after, that smells, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot there to think about. They're definitely getting waxed. So we're spending too much money, but I think, whatever it takes to secure our national security, like before you worry about internal threats, like this whole Marxism push we have in the US, like domestic threats, you have to deal with external threats. You can't even have a conversation about domestic threats if there's external threats that are pushing into you. And that's kind of the whole idea of like where wars start in the first place. You have external and internal threats. You have an internal turmoil and you have external threats outside of you. That increases tension. It's a loop too. So the more external stress you have, the more internal strife there is. And then it goes around and around, because if you're weak from the inside, people on the outside are gonna be like, oh, we can maybe press them a little bit and see where this goes. And so you want to establish that secure external border and presence in order to even get to a stable society in the first place. So whatever it takes to establish that, I'm fine with.
I would tend to think that internal threats are probably our bigger priority right now. I mean, you can say, oh, well, our border wasn't secure. We were having other nations infiltrate our country. But why was that happening?
That would be a big counterpoint right there, yeah.
But why would that be an external threat whenever the whole reason that was even able to happen was because of the internal threats? It's not that, the people
that's how they feed into each other. You see what I'm saying? That's exactly how they feed into each other.
Yeah, it's not that, but in this case, it's not that the external threat was so dangerous. Like, oh, we need to pay attention to them. They're invading our country. It's like, no, all we needed was a change of president. Somebody who's just like, okay, well, we'll lock up the border. We'll get it fixed. It's like that was a primarily
you're making a great point. Think about it. Like Biden knew that deporting works because he was under Obama, and Obama was the deporter in chief, they used to call him. He deported more than Trump. But as soon as he gets in, he opens up the border. He knows. So he created the external threat, which pushed it inward into an internal turmoil. So that's exactly what he was doing. He knew that he could help allow an external threat to infiltrate the country to make it an internal situation where now we have to worry about what's going on inside the borders and outside the borders at the same time at a higher degree than maybe we've had to in the past. So yeah, it seemed like it was intentional, you know.
And Biden can't go off and say, like you said, he was the vice president while Obama was the reporter in chief. He doesn't have the excuse of saying, "Oh well, we thought we needed to pass this legislation to stop this from happening." Like, no, he knew exactly what he had to do to stop this from happening. I don't know if you knew this, but Tom Homan was actually, he wasn't technically the border czar, but he had a pretty high-ranking position within the Obama administration, and he knew Joe Biden too. And he had an interview with Stephen A the other day, and he was just clarifying his disgust for what Biden did. And I think that corruption itself that caused Biden, like that whole deep state on the Democratic side, because we all know Biden wasn't the president. It was everybody working behind the scenes, telling him to do this and that.
The deep state was the president during that term.
And that deep state, those people in the left that were actually secretly pulling all the switches, I think that's the biggest threat to our country in general, external or internal. I think they're a bigger threat than Russia. We got Trump in there, dog, and this shit's going to be clear soon.
It's time for me to dive in. All right,
go ahead.
So, who is the deep state?
The bureaucrats.
Yeah, that's another euphemism. Okay, how about this? I have a list. I have a list, dog. But okay, let me just ask you this. And again, I'm going to start with a theory, guys. I want everyone, if you're watching this still, drop a comment if this is a stupid theory or not. Say civil war or no civil war. There's a guy I watch that's kind of like a faux historian. He makes a lot of videos. He's read a whole lot of history books, more than I've ever heard of. He recommends a lot of good ones. He actually introduced me to Mouse Utopia, which was an experiment that was really interesting about overpopulation and decadence, which is one of the most influential psychological experiments I've ever seen. It's up there like Stanford Prison Experiment's a popular one, but that one was discredited. But either way, he talked about Mouse Utopia, talks about a lot of interesting stuff. And he's predicted that based on the patterns in history, looking at other societies like Rome and all these other big societies, Ottoman Empire, whatever you want to mention, there's a specific historical cycle that all of these empires go through before they fall, and they all fell. And so the period of decadence is basically what occurs right before the fall. And so he was kind of making the point that post-World War II was kind of like the decadence era of the U.S., and we're still kind of coming out of that. And this relates over to Mouse Utopia, guys. I would really encourage you to look at Mouse Utopia. The whole idea was like they would overpopulate a group of mice in a little like commune they made in an enclosure, right? So they have a bunch of little houses for the mice. They put a bunch in there, give them everything they need. So they don't have to hunt for food or like run around and scramble for food. They don't have to do it. There's a little playpen, like a little wheel for them to run around on. There's a bunch of stuff for them to do. It's just an enclosed area. So they're like kind of forced. It's almost like forced socialization, over socialization. And this is something that the Unabomber talked about too in his manifesto. He talked about over socialization and like the technocratic era of the US and how it dehumanizes people. But it relates to this experiment too. It's crazy. And basically what happened was after a certain period of time, it was like one generation. It was like 1 or 2 generations of decadence for these mice. And the new mice didn't have any experience in the real world, like gathering resources or trying to fight to survive or doing what normal mice would have to go through during their childhood to get to, their adulthood, right? So they've been protected from a lot of outside forces that normally mice would have to in a normal, like mice society, right? And what happened was these mice like developed weird behaviors. They started like doing like sexually deviant behaviors. So the male mice would get with the male mice. I'm telling you, like the female mice and the female mice would get together. The males decreased in like testosterone. Like the males like acted more feminine and the females acted more masculine. And they weren't procreating anymore. And they just sat around and got like depressed. Like the mice got sad and depressed and didn't know how to socialize. Because they were born into the decadence. They didn't actually experience anything before that. So all they know is this weird over-socialized era where they have all their needs fulfilled with nothing they have to work for to even survive. And so it kind of took away a lot of that rigor of survival that kind of develops you as a mouse here. But again, mice are the best parallel for human psychology from what we've seen.
So do you think that the rise in technology, social media in particular, YouTube, this overstimulation that we have nowadays and this sort of weird social dynamic that's coming up, do you think that's directly correlated to the rise of LGBTQ, where I think it's now like
Yeah, for sure.
40 or 50% of Gen Z is LGBT?
Yeah. So transgenderism is a social contagion. Yeah, it's been proven that, because again, it didn't increase at a standard rate. It increased at an exponential rate at the rise of social media. So it was around like basically Gen Z has the highest rate of like trans and gay and LG, whatever you want to say, all the alphabet. There's more in Gen Z by like 20,000% or something like that. It's like 20% of 20% of Gen Z is like any of the alphabet letters of gay and queer and stuff. But the one before, like Gen X, it's like 5%. And the one before, it's like 2%. The one before, it's 1%. And really, the linchpin is like the social media and the worldwide, reach you can have. But let me go back, because I think the main point is all the Mises, because that's more the Unabomber manifesto kind of like theory. And again, this guy was a genius. It's not like he was only crazy. Did
he talk about the gay stuff?
You said what?
Did he talk about the gay stuff, predicting that?
He didn't talk about Mouse Utopia, but he said things that were kind of echoed in Mouse Utopia. So he really was just talking more about like over socialization, which shows up in Mouse Utopia. So he's like, you're forced to live in like a big apartment complex with 1,000 people where no one knows each other's names. There's no cultural ties, and you're forced to work from like a certain schedule, and you're trapped in a society. And he's like talking about how you're so trapped you can't even travel when you want. You have to go through several layers of like middle management bureaucracy to even have the autonomy that you should have in a normal life to be happy anyway. So it's like you wake up and you want to like go to a mountaintop, and just look at nature, go on a hike or something, go outside, go kayak. You can't do that without getting it approved by several layers of bureaucracy. And so he's just kind of like talking about how the way that life is set up post World War II, post industrialization era is really what he was talking about, because that was the rise of middle management, the rise of bureaucracy there, and kind of the more forced kind of scheduling of everybody's lives and taking away that autonomy. So he was talking about the stripping of autonomy takes away people's humanity. The technology takes away people's humanity, and the over socialization isolates people, which is crazy. Think about that though. Think about that real quick. He said the over socialization makes people isolate. It isolates people. That's crazy to think about.
Yeah, that is interesting. But how much of this lack of community is because of technology? How much of it is the diversity that's been in flux by, probably illegal immigration? I know you touched on that a second ago. More whites, I love the whites as well. But and then how much of it is the deterioration of the family structures and the incentives that we've placed on society to not prioritize family? I mean, you just think back to whenever.
Let me add to that.
Go ahead.
So the government stepping in and taking the place of a man for a woman, basically, kind of coinciding with Roe versus Wade, no fault divorce, all this stuff, like the law where like now you can rape your wife. Before it wasn't on the books like the 90s. So like now like a wife can claim rape for her husband, which kind of sounds weird to me, but whatever. But a lot of these laws that kind of incentivize women and men to separate, giving women like a whole lot of ability to move away from the family. They're incentivizing women to push away from the family, feminism as well. So that kind of that's part of it too, where it's like it's pushing families away from each other. But yeah, I think you got to look at it historically, right? So they all play a factor. I would say honestly, the first one's probably the biggest one, which would be
what, technology.
No, that's the last one. That's like the big one that kind of exploded it. But before that, it was really the family structure being attacked in
that's what I think. I think
early
that's number
60s.
one.
Yeah, early 60s. But that was basically the same time multiculturalism was really pushed too, like early mid 60s. So I think it's a combination of multiculturalism and destroying the family. And then when technology came around, like after it was like a generation later, really, we see the fruits of that. And so now you see like you're a 12-year-old on TikTok, you see a 35-year-old, queer, like black person on there talking about I'm gay and black and I love it. And it's like, yeah, because there's been like 30 years after the whole like
Right.
dissolution of the family push and the multiculturalism push. Now you see the fruits of it on social media. So you have the perception that this has always been the way that people have
Yeah.
lived, because these people, the people that are confused and like adopted, like that they're kind of added into this whole legion of like the woke mind virus. They get the idea that, oh, people have always been like this, so I should just express myself. And like TikTok has this like, the gay spotlight and all this stuff. And the kids that get on there have no other reference point. They've only been alive for 12 years. They see someone that much older than them talking like that, and they're like, oh, I guess people have always been like this. They were just scared because they were oppressed. And so that's part of like the whole
Right.
mind control thing I don't like
But
too.
that leans more into the technology than the actual multiculturalism itself. You know what I mean? So what I want to do is the way that they push it over technology is what's actually influencing the young minds. It's not the fact that there is
but you have to have
multiculturalism, I think, because it wasn't
multiculturalism
this
first.
bad.
You have to
social
have
media.
the multiculturalism
Okay,
first to
so-
even have the social media there to spread it.
I see
Yeah.
what you're saying, but you could have that multiculturalism there, and if you don't push that kind of bad. So what
So they work together, yeah.
I want to do is I want to rank them. I want to rank them in terms of the most important thing that's deteriorated, a sense of community. The first thing I think,
top of
number
the
one
list?
on my list, is definitely the dissolving of the first thing, top of the list, is the family structure. Whenever they eroded the family structures, they not invited, but women to get divorced from their husbands, because there was actually a point, I think it might even still be the case, where it makes more sense financially to be a single mom. You get so many benefits. Number two,
think about that.
Number two, I would definitely say technology is the worst, because with the whole thing with the multiculturalism, right? I think all of us here, you and me, Pete, we both have interracial, like friends of a different race. Or I know you have black friends. I know you love your black friends.
Guys,
I love
have
my black friends as well.
I'm
I
cool.
love my black friends. I think the important thing I'm trying to distinguish here is that if you have a strong family structure, and you've grown up in a way where you've learned how to develop intimate relationships and interact in the world with a healthy way through an upbringing, which is because you had a strong family. I think whenever that's the type of society you have, you can actually communicate with these different racial groups in a way that's healthy. It doesn't actually erode at all. You know what I mean? Like, we went to a high school that was probably not as diverse as some of the other ones around us, but there
were blacks there. There were blacks and gays.
There were blacks and gays and Mexicans, and the popular people weren't all the white people. It was like people, just whoever was the most fun. You know what I mean? It was like people were able to communicate with different cultures in a way in America that's a little bit unlike other places in the United States. And I don't think
No, I know where he's going with this one.
Listen, all I want to say is I wouldn't put the multiculturalism anywhere other than last, because I think there's a healthy way that we can maintain our society by focusing on the family structure to where it doesn't actually degrade the community that much, as long as they're all Christian. You know what I mean?
I like the altruistic thinking, guys. I think what's going on here is this guy's pretty optimistic. See over here, he's just he thinks on the bright side. Glasses half full with this guy.
I mean, it's based off experience too. I mean, it's just we each had relationships with people of different races and stuff, and you never even really think about it. You know what I mean? Whenever you have friends that are different races, you don't really think about it.
I've told you a story that I might not share on here, but let's just say there's been some, you know what I'm talking about.
But whose fault was that, really?
Let's not get into that.
You know what? Let's just we got way off topic here. Why don't we just jump back into the video and
let's see where it takes us.
I want to see Kevin O'Leary speak some common sense in here.
Where you have scientists which are creating wealth for the country, which is helping the climate. And I think Democrats have to be able to offer common sense perspectives, focus on what the problem is with Musk. Don't focus on the wealth of a company.
On the other side of things, here is what the Commerce Secretary, the actual Commerce Secretary, is saying on TV just tonight about a publicly traded stock. Listen.
Mm-hmm. I think if you want to learn something on this show tonight, buy Tesla. It's unbelievable that this guy's stock is this cheap. It'll never be this cheap again. When people understand the things he's building, the robots he's building, the technology he's building.
I might buy some Tesla after he's saying that. I'm so sad. I had Tesla in 2020. I had like $100 and I pulled it out after 6 months. They made like 50% back, but I should have just kept it in there, man.
I have been eyeballing Tesla. My thing is, because I'm not super experienced with the stock market, I want to buy it at its lowest point right before it shoots back up. You know what I mean? But I don't know how to gauge when that lowest point is going to be. Like, I don't want to.
It's really complicated. I'll tell you. Like, I was looking into being a quant at some point, and like I was trying to learn how to code and look at the finance and the market and everything. And dude, it's so complicated. Like, you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
There's some basic strats you can use. Like, there are shapes you want to look for and stuff like that, and maybe some numbers like percent above and below, like loss and gain. But dude, it's tough. Like, you kind of really like. This is one of those things where I can learn from a Game of Thrones quote where he was like, wise people know what they don't know, and they listen to people that have experience. And so I'm probably going to try and just listen to people that I trust on that, you know.
Might need to listen to some of my family members on that, but I want to buy it whenever it's down 60%, not when it's down 40%. You know what I mean? But I think I'm in the same boat as a lot of people. I think I'm in the same boat as a lot of people that are thinking about buying Tesla too. Their moment. I think most common sense people, especially people on the right, are waiting to, have that bounce back pick. So
yeah, I still have that Trump coin, the meme coin, and I lost like 78% on that one. So
well, that's because you're not very smart.
People are going to be dreaming of today and Jesse Waters and thinking, gosh, I should have bought Elon Musk's stock.
I mean, isn't it a conservative principle that the government shouldn't be picking winners and losers?
Why don't we ask ourselves about the market? It's down 8 to 20% depending on the sector you look at. Tech is down. Tesla's down. We're having a market correction. It happens every 18 to 20 months. And EVs are under pressure because of lots of competition, including from China. Yeah. And so there's a reason. It's not just the fact that it's a political issue around Doge.
Well, then why is Lutnick saying? Why is he saying that if it's not about politics? He seems to think that it is, because he's saying, oh, I'm going to use my platform as the commerce secretary to tell people how to buy and sell stocks.
He's giving people advice. I mean, what? He's like, hey, buy this, you'll make money. Like, she's making it political when he's just like, dude, you guys should buy this. Like, what?
He's actually a private sector guy. He's well known.
I get that. He's got a government job now.
And there's merit to maybe having somebody that worked on Wall Street for that long in that position. But at the end of the day, when people say, oh, Tesla's down because it's a political problem, I think it's a market issue. And if it has great performance and they deliver cars and they make money, the stock will go back up like every tech stock. What about Boeing? That's even a bigger piece of crap.
Let me ask you, Kevin, because you're a business guy. You talk to all these business folks. Be honest. I mean, you look at Trump's policies, consumer confidence down from the lowest point in 2 years. One day tariffs, the other day not tariffs. One day someone's cutting something. I mean, aren't you hearing honestly that there's uncertainty in the business world? They don't know what the policy is going to be, and that this has
caused, very transparent guy.
That this has caused a lot of problems.
Why don't you wait till April 2nd to see all the tariff schedules in every country on earth? And at the end of the day, even the British Prime Minister called over the weekend saying, before we get to April 2nd, let me level out a little bit. Let's make a deal before you expose my tariffs on agriculture.
Yeah, but the market's moving faster, I'll just say. Like, I cover advertising. Advertisers already...
I cover advertising? Yeah, I don't know.
I cover advertising anytime in here.
Hey, look, they cut her off. They gave her 1 second to talk. She got 1 second
I do
left.
think it's probably more 50-50, though, where it's like part of it is the political thing, where Dems are all selling their Tesla and they're not buying Teslas. And it's also what Kevin O'Leary's saying is about a market correction with EVs. I trust Kevin O'Leary. I think he's a smart guy, but it's probably part. I don't think it would be accurate to say that the politics have nothing to do with it, though.
Yeah, I mean, he's the smartest guy on that panel, and he knows the most about this topic out of anybody on that panel. So, I mean, I'm going to listen to this guy. And he's also not the one overrun with emotion like that goofy ass. What was her name? LaShonda? Was it LaQuisha?
I thought it was LaSharkia.
LaSharquia? I think that's what it was.
Yeah, that's it. LaSharquia.
LaSharquia wasn't really doing it for me, but that was an interesting one. We'll end it there, guys. If you guys like the little commentary, just kind of the back and forth, let us know, because that's what we're all about here. We'll see you guys very soon.
Yeah. Until next time.